Absolutely.
And we are live. Good night. I mean, good night. Duh. Starting it off tongue
Good
tied
night, everybody.
already.
Thanks for showing up.
Yeah. Happy night. It's Wednesday night, guys. Thank y'all for coming in to Patriot Catfishers Talk Show. We got two guests right now. We're going hopefully got two more going to be coming in when they get home from work. We're going old school tonight, but let's start this off by saying God bless America. God bless each and every one of you and your families, and we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we're going old school happy tonight. Thank you, Lyle and Dieter, for coming in and joining the show with us tonight.
Listen, I let me just start by saying I feel really aged when I start getting called in for old school talk. Okay, so thank you, appreciate it. Thank you.
I feel aged regardless.
Yeah, there you go. See, Dieter tries to hide his age, and he does a good job at it. I give him that.
I think I look good for 72. I mean, I think I really look good. Still got hair, so I got that going for me. So
It wasn't that long ago. You had a ponytail.
I know. So there we go.
Yeah, Lyle, he don't look too bad for 21, does he?
That's for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, well, guys and gals, I come across a bunch of old paper maps and got me to thinking this would be a perfect thing to start out a show like this is old school. We're going to bring in, hopefully Jeff Manning can join us. He's got his hands full when he gets home every night from work, and I understand that. He might be able to join us. He might not. Junior Proctor works late, but he said he'll jump in here with us for a little bit. But we're going to start out with paper maps. A lot of us, when we first started fishing, we thought, man, that was the name of the game. We could see the whole lake and start trying to make plans of where we want to try to fish.
Still got some.
And a little bit more experience you get, then you start looking at what part of the lakes you want to fish is, at what weather, what water temperatures. There's a lot of things that we had to play in our mind because we didn't have this modern navionics. We didn't have the modern technology of the newer depth finders. Now, there was a few old depth finders back in the day. They showed you little fishies, and you might be on fish and you might be on a brush pile. And all of us, I didn't have none, but I'm sure that Dieter and Lyle had the old flashers. But guys and gals, most of your depth finders you get today still have the old flashers in that depth finder.
Yep.
And the old flashers was actually pretty spot on. That's why they still use them ice fishing, right?
Yep, exactly. And those things are really good when you are anchored up and fishing like straight underneath the boat. If you're, parked, Lyle probably does it doing some of the bouncing and stuff. It seemed like it worked really good. Those things put off and once you learn to read them, it's like any sonar. It takes a little bit of time to understand what that flash is and whether it's bait or a fish. And but they're very, very. That's probably way more effective than traditional sonar when you're actually sitting still someplace. If you're, now you can spot lock on top of fish that are on a ledge or something. And it's a real cool way. It's a cool tool you can still use, and I still use it when I perch fish a lot of times. If I try to spot lock on top of some of them or sitting there anchored up at night or something, it's definitely a tool you can still utilize.
Yeah,
it took a while to figure out the difference between fish and brush piles with them flashers back in the day because you would pull up on a brush pile and think, oh my God, there's a ton of fish in here. And pretty soon you started losing all your crap and you're thinking, oh,
it's a brush pile.
Fish. It's wood.
It's wood.
Reel them in.
It has got my hooks.
Yeah. Several hooks before you figured it out. But, in the day, that was some great technology because all we had was watching the contours as the water flowed by you if there was a change in the way it went by. That's how you told if there was structure underneath the water or a foam line in the river, you knew there was something causing a change in that current, or that wouldn't be there.
Yep. Look for those little mini boils and stuff on top of the water.
Right, swirl holes, stuff like that. Yeah.
I got to figure out how to make somebody some mods. We ain't got no mods in here, and apparently we're getting some trash.
I can switch over to that page.
All right, how about doing that? I don't know what I'm trying to do here. I've got something screwed up. I know how to block them on a computer, but some reason it does not give me the option to get rid of them. Make Chad one. Go ahead and make.
No,
Chad
I can't
one.
do that. Yeah, you have to do that.
All right, hold on a minute.
You got Chad. He's blue.
Okay.
He's blue, all right.
Yeah. Well, see,
He
I
keeps
can't see
throwing
you.
the fishing rods in the water. He'll be a lot more blue.
Guys, I'm sorry about that. I thought I had more mods on here than that. Let me go in here. Sorry. We got Dieter, I'm gonna let you take the stand here just for a second. Before you got any electronics, what was some of the things that you yourself used to help find fish?
Well, those old maps that you got behind you are probably some of them. And the cool thing about them, I wish I could find, we talked about this on the boat today, but I wish I could find some of the old paper ones. The ones we had were I say more modern ones. They were made out of like a plastic vinyl, and it's a company that had all these different lakes map. And those are cool. They got some little secrets on them. But some of them old paper maps I remember looking at would have stuff on them, like they'd have spots where they'd have little stars or a number. It was like a star and a number or something. And you'd go to the back of it and you'd look up that star and number, and it would tell you, largemouth bass, springtime on this point.
Yeah.
It would have stuff on it like in the lake where there was like an old bridge, old steel bridge structure or something underneath the water. I remember looking at them one time, and there was one for an old silo that was the base of a farming silo that was underwater. And
cool.
Yeah, those things are pretty cool. There's some stuff that I remember, basic area of it on Lake Wiley, where there were some concrete pipes that had been dumped, and they'd have little notes on there. So they're really cool for that. The other cool thing you can do, one of my little secrets is, if you can get those old maps and look at what the old water depths used to be. And some of these places, especially like on Lake Wiley, will shock you. You'll see places you'll go, oh, look, it's, 20 feet deep there. And you go there now and it's like there's trees and an island. But a lot of those places, if they're not totally silted in like some things, they're actually good places, can be good places for catfish. They get a lot of, it's all sealed, it's all washed and stuff, it's all deposits. And it seems like mussels like to congregate in those areas for some reason. I don't know if it's that and aquatic snails. I don't know if there's something they're eating down there, I guess because of all the biomass that accumulates there, the leaves, twigs, sticks, and all that stuff. But I think it's probably the snails more than anything end up being in there. So you can find some places like that got a lot of, I guess, stuff they feed on, live in, that kind of thing. So, but yeah, the old maps are pretty cool. I remember it was always, that was the first thing you do if you'd go to a new lake somewhere, get you one of Santee Cooper or someplace like that. And looking back at them and looking at what we've got on Navionics right now, it's crazy how much detail we've got now. But they don't give you any of those little secret spots to fish in the new ones. So
that's right. This book that I just held up, as you can see, it's kind of thick. It has 500 lakes in the state of Missouri.
Oh, I hear you.
And they make those for everything. It's called the Sportsman Fishing Map Guide, and you can buy them for any state. There's what it looks like.
Yeah.
And it has all those contours and lake maps and the breakdown of every of the major lakes in the state. And I keep it right here all the time. And when we're going to go someplace, even if it's to a new boat ramp that we haven't used, I get it out and check it. Now, this one's a few years old. They come out with a new one. And to warn everybody, this Cindy got me, and she bought over the counter someplace. but they're advertising them on Facebook. I don't know if it's the same company. I don't know if that's a scam deal or not. I can't tell you, but this one was not bought online. But it's very helpful, and I don't think anything can take the place of a map, whether it's in a book or the paper maps like James has got, or if it's the map on your depth finder. A map's a map, and if it's got the information you're looking for, it's hard to not have that. And I rely on mapping on my depth finder a lot.
Yes. Yeah.
That's the thing. I get a lot of people hit me up on the YouTube channel asking about which sonar unit should I get. And, I pretty much tell them, spend however much money you got, get one of the top brands, you'll be fine. But make sure it's got some type of charting on it.
That's right.
Forget all the other down scan, structure scan. If you can't afford that, traditional sonar and mapping, if you just got that, you've got what you need.
That's right.
If my sonar goes out and I'm more upset about the mapping being gone than I am the actual sonar being out. Luckily, you can pull the stuff up on your phone now. And look at it. It's a little more of a pain.
I don't
actually, I found out, Dieter, by using both, one on my phone and one on my depth finder. The one on your phone actually is more accurate than my depth finder.
Yeah, it'll have the updated, whatever the updated chart is. Because mine's got some of the old anomalies.
Where, like, if you go to pull up on a bridge, it might be a little delay on your mapping on your depth finder. But on your cell phone, it puts you right where you're at.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because the GPS on your phone is a lot better than what's in your fish finder or what it is. But we did notice that. We got 59 people. Appreciate you, everybody coming in.
Woohoo! Good crowd.
Keep the thumbs up and share it out there. This is some great information in here tonight, guys.
I think that the phone stuff stays more updated than even the Navionics charting.
Yeah.
I think so.
They just update them all the time.
Yeah. I think so too. I think it's one of the reasons it would be because so many people use their cell phones.
Yeah.
This is another one I got my hands on. This is the Santee Cooper, and they've got. If you look, well, y'all can't see it. It ain't gonna show you too much glare. They are buoy markers. They are all kind of shallow water markers and stuff on here. Safe spots, bad spots. But these maps, Dieter, ain't quite old enough to have all that information that the older ones used to have. These are actually waterproof ones. So
you pull that map out and I see it, and I can almost smell the musty room down at Black's camp.
Yeah.
And that map spread out on the bed the night before you're going fishing, and you're sitting there plotting out where you're going and looking for and stuff. There's an old Santee one. That might have been one that I seen, an old paper one that had a lot of the like old houses and old farmhouse and a bunch of that stuff down there that was flooded when they made that. So, man, if you could ever find one of those things, that would be a cool little gem to have.
And a lot of people don't understand when Santee Cooper was being built, World War II started.
Yep.
And they flooded the lake before they ever finished clearing it. And so there's whole towns down there underneath it. And if you could actually figure out exactly where a lot of that stuff is, when them catfish is in deep water, that is probably... Yeah. Now you might lose a lot of your rigs, but that's
well, there's only one person that knows who it is, and a few people in the chat will know who it is, and that's Captain Darrell. Captain Darrell knows where every house and foundation of every barn that is in Santee Cooper, and he would be the man with all that knowledge. So some of y'all will get that joke, but anyway.
Yeah. Cindy just come in here and looked at this book, and where she got it was...
No, I didn't get it from that.
Okay, sportsmansconnection.com. is where it comes from. It's a place out of Wisconsin that makes those. They make them for every state. So
now, my buddy
if anybody's interested in that, that's where I would check.
My old buddy Wampus Cat just put on here. He's got one of the old Santee maps. It's got the old brickyard on it.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. That's a treasure. That's worth framing and putting up on the wall. If I had one of those, that's what I would do with it. That would be,
if I
would
was
be
doing
some
a
cool
show,
stuff.
Put that on the background.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd
He
be
got him and his
awesome.
daddy went down there since he was a kid. They'd go down there and fish in the canals when the blues and stuff was chasing the herring up the canals and stuff, and they'd wear them out. I mean, you can still do that, guys and gals. There's places in that canal on the banks that when the herring's making their run, go sit on the bank and have a ball, but better be ready. Now, Lyle, we've heard some of the stories of your younger days out getting started. What really helped you more than anything, besides electronics and stuff, to start pinpointing? Not well, I ain't gonna say pinpointing. Start targeting the bigger catfish instead of just the eater fish.
I will be quite honest. What got us going when I was younger was the guy I fished with. Uh, grew up 11 miles from Mississippi River, and my brother's father-in-law was an older gentleman, and I would go out with him in a 16-foot John boat with a 40-horse motor, and he would show me the differences in the river and behind the dam at Clarksville and the lanes between the locks and where you wanted to fish to catch the big fish and where you wanted to go on the Illinois bank in the eddies to find the small eating size fish.
Right.
And he showed me the different contours and what foam lines was and what lanes was behind those dams and why that you wanted to fish those because the fish had been out in the current behind those locks when the water's coming through their feeding and they go in them lanes and rest that. Or if they wanted to swim up and down, it was easier swimming, so that's where they go. And that's where I learned about fishing stuff. That was before Mark Twain Lake was made. I was pretty young, just old enough to drive and stuff like that. And I'd go down there and fish with him a lot. And a guy like that's invaluable. He didn't need a map. He knew which wing bites the fish should be on. He knew if they was going to be out on the tip of it by the way the water flowed, or if they was going to be in behind because it was too fast. And with a 40-horse motor on a Mississippi River, you didn't go very fast. But it's what he had. And when he bought a new boat, he bought a brand new 16-foot with a 40-horse motor. I mean, that's what he knew. It all had tillers, handles. But days with that guy never had any kind of electronics. He grew up on that river. He knew it, and he would share it with you. And that's why I say when them flashers come out, holy crap, man. It was a game changer because the stuff that he had taught us, you could relate to because you could actually see it then, or at least see parts of it. Now you can see it all. I mean, everything's available to look at. But that was the game changer for me.
Yeah, it's me and Junior talked. I talked to him a little earlier, and he gave me a couple things just in case he can't come in. He would look at the water itself, and the water will tell you a whole lot. It'll show you back eddies. It will actually show you rises in the water that come close to the surface without actually breaking the surface. If you watch how the waves break and stuff like that, steep mud banks, you look over on the side of the lake or the river, and you see a bunch of sand with mussel shells in it. To me and y'all, that tells me that there's mussel beds close by.
Yeah. Yep. That's the new fishing spot.
Yeah. And that was some of the things that we looked for, especially like during the summer when you see the mussels floating. We knew you get them mussels and start fishing mussel beds, and you're gonna have a heyday. You're gonna catch your limit of eaters. There's just no buts about it. But what's some of the things, guys, that y'all learned from not just maps and stuff like that, but from reading the land, the water, whatever else that would help give you the confidence that you might be in that right spot for that?
See, that's where the technology is great, because I know there's going to be a bunch of people go, well, you got whatever sonar, I don't need any of that. That's all old school crap. That's what they had to deal with. But there's stuff that you can figure out very quickly once you kind of know, like you're talking about reading the land, not the water, but the land. If you got a steep bluff coming down, a rock cliff, if you want to call it that, well, 9 times out of 10, it's not going to hit the water and go flat. It's going to keep going down. If you got a steep bank like we got here on Lake Wiley with these red clay banks, road, generally speaking, that slope's going to come down, and it's going to keep going at about that same steepness. And the opposite is you get into a place where the water or the land is barely higher than the water. It's probably going to be very flat and very shallow in there. And you can look at a sonar to figure all that out, and that's fine. But is knowing little things like that gives you the ability to process stuff very, very quickly when you're out there. When you're looking down the river, down the lake, you can go, I'm thinking about going here, and you can go, it's steep bank on that side. It's probably going to be deeper. All the fish been up shallow. You can use all that stuff and keep it in your little tool shed up in your head. And it's just like the little nuggets of stuff you get off of these maps. It's all part of the bigger puzzle, pieces in the puzzle that help you kind of process stuff when you're out there in the water. And that's why I like getting all these little nuggets of stuff. I talked to you, James, on the boat today about some of the old pictures that you can find. Digging up some of these old black and white pictures of these places. We had the big flood here back in 1916. There's a lot of black and white pictures of that. And guess what? There wasn't any lake there then. There was a river. And a lot of these pieces of these bridges, these concrete footings that are on these bridges that got washed away, all that stuff's covered by the lake now. They left a lot of that stuff in there. Yeah. And it's little stuff like that you get all these little nuggets of stuff from different places. It helps stuff make sense when you're out there on the water, and it helps you process it quicker and gives you some ideas on why fish may be here. If you catch them there, it gives you an idea of, they may have been here because of this. So that's why I say to anybody that kind of wants to dismiss it because, hey, I got live scope. I can just look out there and see when the fish is getting ready to eat it. You got to trust me.
Put the boat in the right place to be able to do that.
And that's the thing with live scope. It's great as long as you got the fish. You still got to find the fish to be able to see them, to be able to try putting the bait in front of them. So, all those little nuggets, as much crap as you can get in your head, as you can gather out there, it ain't going to come quickly. It's you kind of have to dig and scour, but it also makes part of the experience of fishing and chasing fish, pursuing fish cooler. You got a reason why you're there and why you're doing it.
Well, and there's so many days that we might be out just with the family out pleasure boating, and you're hauling tail down that cotton picking water, pulling a skier, and you might come across something because your depth finder can't read it that fast. Yeah. You might come across something you see on the bank, or you see the water doing something that you hadn't ever seen before, and you'll put that in your mind. Mm-hmm. But when I come back, I got to check that out.
Yep.
And they might be the biggest log jam underneath the water that's coming right next to the surface of water. That might be your flathead heaven.
Yep.
And if you don't pay attention to that stuff, guys, you might spend a day of wasteful riding looking for nothing.
Yep. And another thing to do too, if you can get on the water safely during high water conditions or low water conditions, there's a lot you can learn. High water is really cool because even if you're on a lake or reservoir, like we fish a lot here in the Southeast, it's speeding up the water flow. Water does move through a lake eventually on these dam controlled lakes. And when you get high water, flood, they're moving stuff through there, you get to really see where current speeds up at and where it slows down at. And that kind of gives you, it may not be something that applies to fishing right there, but it helps you kind of learn, like you were saying earlier, to read water. Lyle's got real good at that, out being on rivers and stuff.
Right.
Water doesn't move evenly down a river. It's not moving all at the same speed. It varies depending on its outside bend, whether it's deep, whether it's shallow. And being out there during high water, it's kind of cool to watch it. There are places where it flows back upstream. You get the right combination of stuff in a bend, stuff will swirl in, it'll flow back upstream. So it's a good thing. And low water, if you can get out safely, you'd be amazed what you can find there. You can find where some of these, deeper ditches are. Bass fishermen love doing it because they can get out there and go, oh, there's a pile of rocks off that point, or there's an old pier laid there underwater. So That's one thing I hear everybody talking about on Lake Wateree when they drop the lake 7 feet next year. You know, is they want to get their boat out on the water to see where all this stuff is hidden in the water.
I
So
want to know where they're going to put out to get their boat in the water down there if they drop it 7 feet.
yeah, because there's very few places you can even dock a boat when they drop it. You're gonna have to be somewhere up in the river along some of them bluff walls tied up there to be able to get one in. So
That's where them kayakers is going to jump on there
oh
and
yeah,
really score.
yeah, that's where they can
And
go
that's
anywhere they
one good
want
thing
to.
about the Google Earth guys, and you've heard me mention it, you've heard Lyle mention, probably Dieter also, is that you can go back through the timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And if you find the timeline or happen to remember the year where you had major droughts, son, that can tell you stories, but you got to pay attention.
Yep.
You got to use some thinking about the way the fish act. Where I look and I kind of combine gold mining with my fishing, where you was talking about the water will slow down and stuff. All right, when water slows down, guys, things drop out. Things start dropping to the bottom. That means bait will start dropping to the bottom. Means the hungry fish will be sitting right there waiting on that slack water to drop him a good little nibble to eat.
Yep. Yep.
Now, Lyle, give us a little hint on rivers. I've never fished a major river. Dieter might have. I haven't. What was some of the hints if I go out there and go fishing and pull my boat 400 miles and get out there and my electronics are not working? What are some of the things, the hints that you could give me and us out here, or even new fishermen, that might help them at least put a fish in the boat?
Well, if I was going to jump on, say, if I was going to go down the Mississippi River and I hadn't been to this particular boat ramp, I would get out there and I would look for wing dikes. And if the river wasn't cranking real hard, or if you was up north of where the dams start instead of down south, I would try to fish off the end of the wing dikes, because there's always a scour hole there. And fish will almost nearly every time be in that scour hole, but they'll also be up on the sides where it goes down, and you can drop your bait and you can either walk it through there, or you can just place it around that scour hole and they'll come up and bite it. Another good place is the slack water behind wing dikes. Wing dikes and the dams in the big rivers are the biggest piece of structure in there. And behind almost all those wing dikes, there's rocks, and there's also usually trees and wood of some kind. And you can go in there and find it. A lot of times, if the water's low, you can see it and you can fish it. And there'll always be channel cat and small blues in there. A lot of times, flatheads too.
Yes.
That's the first place I would start. And then if you was in a boat and you're not nervous about doing it, then I would get as close as I could to the dam and fish in between the locks, because, like I say, that's a passageway that they run up and down because the water is slack, not near as much current. And the hotter the weather and the water, the more fish will be in there, because they go up in there, because coming through them dams, there's tons of bait fish. But more importantly, there's tons of oxygen, and they'll be up in there resting and eating, and it's just a great place to fish.
And that was something that me and Dieter were talking about earlier, was just saturated oxygen in your water and stuff. Is, I think a lot of people might overlook that.
I'm sure they do.
That is a big attractor to fish. They got to breathe.
A lot of people are afraid to fish underneath dams, and they do bear respect. But if you pay attention to what you're doing, and it's a good idea to always have someone with you up there and wear your PFD. I mean, I don't, and I know I should a lot of times, but I always tell people it's going to be up there, especially if they're nervous about being there. Do not go up there without it, regardless of the dam, just simply because it's a safety factor.
Especially if they're spilling. If those spillways are open, it's one thing if they're just generating power through the turbines.
Right.
But when those dams are spilling, there are hydraulics that go on there that people aren't used to dealing with. And it's best there ain't no fish up there worth catching whenever it's like that.
That's right. Some of them, like Keokuk Dam, has huge boulders and stuff underneath that dam. And if you don't know how to get up there to it, you better stay away from it, because you tear up your boat. Myself, I've been up there before, but with guys that know what's going on, I don't go up there by myself. But below most of them, like Clarksville and the Melville Price Dam at Alton, which is very famous for having large fish, you can go up in there. but there's restrictions. You got to pay attention. You can only go so far. Don't get yourself in trouble.
Right. And you can't get caught when they all of a sudden stop flowing water. If you don't pay attention, you might be sitting on a boulder and all of a sudden your boats are rocking around because there's no water under you.
That could happen. Yeah, I've not seen that.
Seen it happen.
It could, yeah.
And I've seen people having to run and fiddle and try to find a knife to cut anchor ropes when that water all of a sudden starts rising. Always keep a knife right beside your anchor rope, a good sharp one.
Front and back.
Try to keep one in your pocket too.
Yeah. Don't leave home without it.
That's fact. We've had to cut anchor ropes before. When Truman Lake was at its high, which is made from the Osage River mainly, my son and I was fishing because the water was stroking and the fish was on fire. We was up there 3 or 4 times that week. It was 30-some feet above flood and set records. People was going by in their boats with paint cans and marking on the rocks how high the water level was. And we fished that 3 days that week and just laid out fish every time we was up there. And my oldest son wanted to go. We was up there one day and we was in a bend on the river and the anchor got stuck and he couldn't pull it up. And I was trying to get him up there to it. He was going to pull it up. I just cut the rope where the front of the boat's going to, and he wouldn't cut it, but he was going to get it. You know, he was a stud. He was going to get that anchor out of there. I just went up there and left the boat running, cut the rope with it in his hands because we was going down. And of course that relieved us and we went on. I had more anchors, but you know, you just got to do it sometime. But he had it in his mind he could get that anchor out of them rocks, and it wasn't happening that time.
Yeah.
No, it's hard to get them up out of them rocks. And I sat here looking at this, Dieter. This is the South Fork.
Yep.
And this one's old enough. It's not showing a few of those islands that's back there in the back of the South Fork.
Yeah. Yeah. They showing some stuff up to there. I know I put something on social media last week about there's a dredge up there. Some local people have paid to have some stuff dredged out up there in the river channel. But that river channel up through there was never super deep. But, you know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, there was an 8-foot run up through there.
Yeah.
You had the whole way. There was shallow places. There were shoals. Now, when the lake's at its target elevation, which is 3 feet below full pond, my transducer reads around 2 feet. So I probably got about another 11 inches. So it's, you know, gone. I mean, that's 5 feet of sand, leaves, you know, debris, runoff, settled, all muddy water is water with dirt in it. It's very little dirt, but you know, that dirt at some point is going to settle. And yeah, the places like that on the map, it's amazing to see how much that has filled in over the years. And a lot of it has to do with development. We've got a lot of development going on around here. And, you know, they've just got a grasp on trying to control the runoff from it. But yeah, that's crazy. Some of the stuff you'll see
next to Paul Creek, where I looked at some of my very, very old maps for gold mining and was looking for a specific spot. It says that the riverbed was 37 foot. Well, guess what? My depth finder was reading 24 foot.
Yep.
Wow.
And once I checked it out, actually, that is one giant stinking freaking mussel bed.
Yeah.
I'm talking about been there a long time. It was rotten. When I pulled some of that mess up, it was rotten. It was stinking. It was black, muck, gooey. But there was arches everywhere.
Yeah.
They was fish all over it. So mark them spots, guys. Pay attention to different things like that. The water will tell you a lot. It don't matter if you got a depth finder or not, if you can afford one or if you can't. There are some avenues out there like maps. You can still get maps, lake maps. And there's a lot of maps that you can get that'll actually give you good contour maps. That you can get a free version of Navionics. Google Earth pretty much free. Use everything to your advantage. Learn things from talking to people like Lyle, Dieter. That's where we relied on a lot of the older gentlemen that had fished in waters their whole life to help get us started.
Absolutely.
I just seen a comment in there from Palmetto Cats about the Patriot James tournament when they He ran into a new shoal. That place he ran into was, like he said, I think he said 28 feet on the map. There was a deep hole there, and that was basically a sand island that got washed down in a flood. I think it was in February of that year, and they actually have, just to make you feel good, there's a line of buoys in front of it now that mark it, but it sat there for,
Oh,
it was
they
a
did
while.
finally mark it.
Yeah, they finally marked it. They got buoys out in front of it, and I don't have to pull anybody off of it anymore. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
he said he was
amazing.
waving at him when he went flying.
I was yelling and screaming. I had a guide party up there, and he just looks at me and waves. He thought I was just being nice. He waves. I'm going, no, no, and it's like, oh, so. But he hit it slow. There were some other people I watched that previous week. I mean, there was one boat. It about threw the people. I mean, kind of lunged them into the console because they were in a pontoon boat, and when it finally dug in, I mean, it stopped.
It come to a halt.
Yeah. And there's bass boats. I watched a bass boat one day going in. I was like, oh, he must know a cut across there. And he's like, and stuff's flying out the back. Okay, he doesn't know a way across it. So
Glenn, that's what Glenn was talking about. So they pulled a bunch of boats off of that last year.
yep.
The thing about the rivers where I grew up was every year there's a flood. Every year. And some years it's a lot worse than others. And there's been sandbars 2 or 3 miles long that people go up every weekend and party on and barbecue and drink and have just more fun. The next year that might be gone. It might be there for 10 years, and then all of a sudden
I've heard that. Yeah, I've heard that about those places. That's crazy.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, they change around, and there was one above Louisiana that was there for a long time, one down below Clarksville that I spent many an afternoon on, and the next time you go down there, it's just, there's nothing there but trees. They've washed everything out back to the woods.
That's
and
unreal.
It's just unbelievable how that happens. But it may be there for 20 years, it may be there for 1 year, but people will find it and they'll enjoy it. And sand is an amazing thing. It'll settle somewhere every time.
Yep.
And I'm sure we have Creoles in the house today, and I am quite sure that he can attest for that because he's probably got sand down there in Mississippi and Louisiana that come from us up here,
Probably.
in Illinois and Iowa.
Hey guys, I'm gonna tap out. I've got to go actually cook fish, so I'm getting text messages from the wife that I shouldn't have cooked it already.
Might as well be you.
That's it.
Peter,
that's it.
I want to thank you for coming in and sharing.
Absolutely.
Some of this. They will be a part 2. So get your questions, and maybe by then, Dieter, for the next one, you'll have some more stuff to add to this that we didn't cover tonight. But I do.
If not, I'll make it up. So
there you go. There you go. Dieter,
all right, buddy.
Thank you, my friend.
See y'all. Bye.
Bye. Oh, he's always a good one to have in.
He is
full of crap.
knowledge.
Yeah, a wealth of knowledge. He's full of crap, but he don't.
He is there.
Sharing, yeah. He don't mind sharing some good information. Old Junior Proctor and Jeff Manning must have got covered up and wasn't able to join us tonight, but that's okay. We still able to share a lot of knowledge.
That's part of being in the working community. If you're still working and if you've got a good quality job, you have to take care of that regardless. And maybe when you do your next show, they'll be able to make it come in because both of those guys are just full of ideas and knowledge, and they can add a lot to a conversation no matter what you're talking about.
And see, Jeff was really a good one because he can relate to you on the river side of it because of where he grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And he's fished a bunch of different style of waters that will help people. Now, guys and gals, I know a lot of you are experienced, probably been doing it longer than I have, been chasing the big fish longer than I have. For years, we didn't chase big fish. We would hope for a big fish, but we fish to fish and have fun and enjoy what the good Lord's blessed us with. But once you start chasing those bigger fish, there's a lot of knowledge that comes from a lot of the old things that we had to learn because we didn't have modern technology. We had to learn to look for these things, or we was going home skunk.
That's
and
right.
after a couple trips of getting skunked on the water, something's got to change.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to go out there and get skunked but a couple of times, and you're going to figure something out because you just can't stand it. You can't go out there knowing there's millions of fish underneath you and you can't snag one. There's something you're doing something wrong. You got to figure it out.
Right. And guys and gals, Mother Nature will tell you too. Watch the birds. If you need to find
Absolutely.
bait, watch the
Absolutely.
birds.
They'll be where
Not
the bait's
always.
at. They will be where the bait's at.
You daggum right. And what do they call them? Chondrons or something that eats the bigger bait fish?
Comrades?
Comrades. If you see your pile of them, you can guarantee you there's going to be some bigger bait fish in them waters.
Pelicans
Not
too.
just the tread fins, not just
Yeah.
tread fins, but they're going to be bigger bait fish there.
We have a big migration every year. We have a migration through the lakes where I'm at of pelicans that come down.
Oh, I hear you.
And I promise you, them pelicans know where that bait's at.
Yes. Yeah, they get a bird's eye view, and they got a lot better eyes than us.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And they just know. I believe that they read the river or the lakes because a lot of times you can't see in our lakes. I know some people in some areas, people have vision. They can see down several feet. But you can't where I'm at. You just can't.
And that's why Lake Wiley is. It's
they just know where that's at. Yeah, they see them flopping and flipping and carrying on, and they go get them. But you can't see underneath the water very often where we're at now. The last summer was as clear as I seen it on some of the lakes down here, but normally it's not. On them rivers, you can't see. You can't see in them rivers. They're just too muddy, you know.
And with you saying that, Lyle, do you think that colors really make that much difference as far as catfishing?
I do
catfish
not.
Don't have that good eyes.
No, I do not. I don't think it makes a difference. I tell you what I think makes the biggest difference on catfish is smell and vibration.
Yep. Agreed. Because they can feel vibrations that's crazy.
That's right. And they come out with these line rattles that spin and rattle.
Yeah.
And when you're down 20 feet underneath the Missouri or the Mississippi River in 6, 8, 9 mile an hour current, I do not believe they hear that rattle. I think they feel the vibration of it. And I think they feel the vibration of line if it's anchored down as the water passes through it. Now, I don't know if that deters them or if it bothers them at all. I don't have any way of knowing. But line rattles, I believe, make a difference. And I don't think it makes any difference on the noise, but I think they feel the vibration. And when you're suspending baits up off the bottom, your sinker's down here and your bait's up here on a three-way and it's sitting in there flopping, I think they feel that and they'll go right to it if they can smell it.
Right. And I fished Wiley in a couple lakes during the flood time when they was actually moving water pretty hard. And I've heard my lines vibrating.
Absolutely.
And that, most animals are curious. I'm sure some of them, like bait fish or stuff, they real weary because they're always being eat. But your top predators on the food chain, they're going to be curious. That's like me bush hogging. I've sat and watched bucks and does sitting out there on the edge of the fields watching me.
Yeah.
And that making all kind of noise of banging and stuff. So I'm not sure that catfish, but I'm thinking that like these rattles and stuff like that, Lyle, and like the demon dragon things and stuff like that. I don't know if it's so much as, like you said, I've dove underneath the water. Underneath the water is loud.
Yeah, there's a lot of noise down there.
It is loud. There's a lot of noise, especially if you're in the warmer part of the season when you got a lot of boat activity and stuff like that. Underneath that water is loud. If you're in the river, like most time when I'm diving gold mining, I'm in a river. And it's not that big a river like the Mississippi, but it's loud down there.
Yeah.
The water running across the rocks, the bubbling, the gurgling, the sand moving and stuff like that. It is very loud, but I'm not so sure that them rattles not really attract, but I do think that they maybe help that catfish lock down harder on that bait.
Well, James, I will tell you, we was at Mississippi River Monsters a few years ago, and Doc Lang was fishing with Cindy and I. And I didn't have this happen to me per se, but Doc had demon dragons on his lines, and they was hitting those, and he was catching fish on his bait, which was directly behind him. But they would knock the paint off them demon dragons.
Yeah.
They was biting on them so hard.
I've had them peg floats just be crushed.
Yeah.
They crush a peg float.
Yep.
You know, what do? I slide that peg float right against my cotton.
Right next to it, you betcha.
Right. Yeah. You
just as quick as you get it there.
Yeah. I learned that a long time ago. We was chasing white bass down at the hot hole while it was snowing to beat the band. They was pulling water. The water was steamy. The white bass and largemouth. Everything was just tearing the shad up. And I was watching these guys that's throwing crappie jigs behind floats. And they was catching them, you know, pretty regular. Well, all I had was them old chartreuse floats that had the lead on the bottom of them. You know the one I'm talking about, little clip floats. Yep. That's all I had in crappie jig. Well, I throw it out there, and the white bass, if y'all have never caught white bass, when they're feeding, they want it as fast as you can freaking reel it. The faster you can reel it, the harder they'll hit it.
Better they like
but they was coming up hitting my float. I thought, well, I ain't no dummy. So I reached in my tackle box, poured out a little tiny treble hook, tied it on my line, jerked the crappie jig off, tied the little treble hook on, and put that bobber right against that treble hook, throwed it out there. I was catching 10 to their 1, son. They was wearing them bobbers out.
Yeah.
So pay attention. Mother Nature will tell you what she wants, but you got to listen. Bees, rattles, and spooks.
That's a great analogy there, Roger. It really is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and it's like anything else. There's gimmicks out there like the old flying lure or whatever in bass fishing.
And that's what some of that is. Some of that is just gimmicks.
And it is, but you don't know till you try. You know, it might be that thing you look and said, well, that crap ain't going to freaking work. That might be the next thing that changes catfishing.
You know, you and I have talked about this a lot. There's something out there that somebody's going to discover one of these days that's going to change the way we catch fish. And I'm talking about catfish.
Yeah.
I believe that somebody at some point is going to come up with something, and they're going to just every time they go out, they're going to knock them out.
Yeah.
And when that happens, eventually that word will get out that this guy's doing this or that, and everybody will be doing it. When Demon Dragon style stuff come out, when Scott Manning first come out with that here several years ago, at first I thought it was a marketing thing until I tried them, and they do work. I'm not sure they work every day or in every situation, but noise changes things under that water. Anything that you can do to attract it, whether it's a smell, whether it's a noise, whether it's a vibration. Like I say, those spinning line rattles, I believe, is a huge deal because of the vibration, not because they rattle, because of the vibration. And whatever you can come up with that's an advantage to you catching more fish, hey, you got to try it.
There you go. There you go. Guys, before we get too far, there's a lot of new faces I've seen come in tonight. Please share the love and share the bait. Share this show out because there's a lot of great information. And I talked to a couple guys, and I talked to a guy yesterday, Lyle. He's new to fishing. He's fished all his life, basically, with family and friends and stuff. But he's really wanting to get into chasing the catfish. And I'm going to tell you guys what he told me. He's catching them on below some dams. And that's a black fluke that they use for bass fishing. And he's throwing it out and just bumping it along the bottom like an injured bait fish. And he's catching flathead catfish with, I think he said, a 6-inch fluke.
Yeah.
The bigger flukes.
Yeah.
Who would have guessed? I mean, black to me in dingy water, like Lyle was talking about, it's the dingy out there in the rivers and stuff and the lakes. Same thing with Wiley. Black is my favorite color on anything. All my Demon Dragon floats and stuff like that, every one of them I've painted black. And I've set them out in the sun so they off gas. So a lot of people's worried about painting things that it'll off gas. you can look in the paints and you can find some that has got the low, was that UV, not UV, but something in it. So it don't, I worry about a chemical smell like gasoline on your hands and paint. I worry about
lay outside. The wind, it'll get rid of most of that. And then once it goes through that water for a little while, that's all going to be gone anyhow. James, I want to tell you something. It's been a long time ago. Cindy and I was fishing a tournament, and it was the end of the year, and it was snowing. It was cold. We was on the Mississippi River in Quincy, Illinois, and it was way up into the tournament. About noon, I got behind some barges, and we got to casting out quarter size baits, and I was slow roll them on the bottom, and we didn't have a fishing boat, and I started catching channel cat. And I one right after another. And we would cast out just like you was bass fishing and slow roll along that bottom, and we get a bite every time. And Cindy got cold about 2:00. I surprised she lasted that long because it was in the 30s, low 30s. I took her back to the bank. She got all the stuff doing it, and I went right back to that spot and started catching them again and upgraded 2 or 3 fish. Pardon me. We went from not having any fish to like 3rd or 4th, maybe 5th place in that tournament, doing that on little channel cat. So different presentations. A wise man named Jason Mathena told me a long time ago, if you're not catching fish, change your presentation. If you know the fish are there, if you're marking fish and you're not catching them, change your presentation. You're doing something they don't like, and you got to change it to make it where they'll come and bite what you're offering them.
Yes. I couldn't tell you how many in the days of my bass fishing. Don't get me wrong, guys and gals. I was always a cat fisherman, but I love my bass fish. I still love the bass fish, but I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you the number of channel cats that I caught on rubber worms and lizards and stuff like that. And even in the wintertime, pulling a Carolina rig with a long leader with that lizard behind it or that worm behind it, bumping down through some of those river channels or on deep humps. You know, we're looking for bass on deep humps in the wintertime, would get hammered by channel cats. Just hammered. So,
absolutely.
And what you're talking about something changing the catfishing world, and it's probably going to be somebody that just started fishing.
Maybe
that figures it out, because they're not programmed with a certain thing about catfishing. Their mind is open up to try anything because they want to catch a fish so bad that their mind is open up to any possibilities. I think that's why all these different baits, like store-bought baits and stuff like that, come from, is because people's tried it.
Yeah. You know, James, years ago we used to go over the New Year's weekend or holiday with Big Dave from Bottom Dollar Tackle and tons of us with Doc Lang and his grandson. We'd all go down and meet up at Cumberland City, Tennessee, and catch skipjack. And we try to catch enough skipjack that was our bait for the year. We haven't done it in a long time, but that was a big deal for several years. We'd done that. And I was down there and got to visiting with a guy that was staying with Dave Ashby in the motel with him. And he got to telling me about how he catches flatheads, and he got gigantic spinnerbaits. Yeah. And he would put a piece of cut bait on the spinnerbait and drag it with that and he said, man, you can't believe all the fish I caught. Well, I thought he was full of it, and I never could catch anything on it. But I've caught some great flatheads over the years, but I usually caught them when I was fishing for blues, because I was a tournament guy for a long time. Right. That's what you win tournaments with. Right. But I've never forgot that, and I've come up with a new deal and a jig that works similar to that I'm going to be trying this year. Hopefully it'll work out. But I've never forgot that. He said, man, in the springtime of the year, he said, forget all that other nonsense. Get that spinnerbait out and get the biggest one you can get. And he says, you can catch flatheads like that.
Lyle, I'm glad you brought it up, but I hadn't told a soul about it. I actually found up here at the Bass Shack, we've got some people that actually custom make different kind of jigs and spinner baits and stuff like that. And I've actually got an 1.5 ounce spinner bait.
There you
It's
go.
got Colorado blades on it. That
Yep,
freaking big.
that's what you need.
And when you pull that big old thing through the water, you can feel it thumping. Boom, boom, boom. You can feel that big old blade a thumping. You can't tell me if you'd put a daggum, say, little old 6-inch gizzard shad right up through the bottom of the thing, right out the nose,
That'd
behind
be
that
perfect.
son of a gun.
Cut his tail off, make him bleed a little bit.
Oh.
Yep.
To me, if that ever happens, Lyle, if somebody starts showing people that you can catch catfish consistently on artificial baits and stuff,
it'll change the way we fish.
I got a feeling that some of these big catfish boat manufacturers are going to be starting to make bass boats.
I can see Pontoon Jody already figuring that out. She's already thinking about it. I don't even know if she's in chat, but if she hears that, she fishes for flathead, she'll be trying it. I promise you.
Well, guys and gals, flatheads are the ultimate predator in that water.
That's exactly right.
He wants to eat something live. That's what he wants.
To eat it every day.
Yeah, every day.
Every day.
So he's going to eat, I would imagine, Lyle, that probably 90% of the food that a flathead eats is a reaction bite. Not a scent, but sight, grab, eat, swallow.
I'll tell you something else that I always thought would work for that, James, is those great big pieces of that looks like crawfish.
Yes.
Put one of them on one of them and drag it through that bottom. If there ever was a time for some kind of a scent,
yep,
that's the place for it. Put it on a big old 10-inch crawdad bait and pour the scent to that or inject it in it, whatever you got to do, and just drag it up through where you know there's a bunch of trees or rocks or brush. If there's a flathead in there, it's got to work. It just has.
I've caught so many catfish on the pigs and jigs. It's just a jig head with a little old, and it's actually pork rind, but it's got a scent on it or whatever. And the channel cats would eat that son of a gun, and it mimics a crawfish.
Do they still make pork rind baits?
I think so. Yep.
I haven't seen any in years.
I've turned them things over in the daggum boat on the carpet and stuff, and you can't get that oily, stinking mess out of your carpet for nothing.
Oh, I'll bet. Yeah. I used to have a tackle box at the bottom of it was full of them jars of that stuff. And then your baits and stuff would be in the top part of the tackle box. And it worked really well, and it was a natural action floating through the water. Why wouldn't that work? But a piece of shad, flay off one side, cut his tail off, make him bleed, and drag that up. I'm going to be on them lakes this spring. I got to try that, man.
Oh, well, yeah. And I mean, and you know, Lyle, they make you was talking about the line rattle. You know, you could set it up and peg a weight right against your hook and put one of those line rattles on there.
Absolutely.
And then put your bait, and you could work it just like anything else. And actually, you could actually feed that hook up and just barely stick it back into the skin and almost make that bait weedless.
That's right. I can see these people in chat. They're already getting their tackle boxes out.
Hey, I'm telling you guys, I've actually caught catfish on, and I've seen a couple other people say it, on rattle traps. Well, a rattle trap is not a slow-moving bait.
No.
So that'll tell you real quick, guys and gals, a catfish don't mind chasing something if he wants to eat it.
That's exactly right, and they will, and a blue will too. They're used to, especially in the rivers that I grew up fishing in, there's heavy current.
Uncle Buck's pork rinds. That's what it's called. I forgot. It's Uncle Buck's.
They used to have all designs and different cuts of that stuff, and I had them all, you know, just like everybody else. Whoops, I see. Let me get over here. I see you got a spammer right there.
We went for a year and a half and didn't have all that junk in. Now all of a sudden they're coming in almost every show.
Well, Oh, Chad got him. They figured out how to get past it. Is what happened, and you got to have good monitors like Chad. People like that need to get them to get rid of them because they'll just overtake you if you don't. But
Yeah.
I forgot where it's at. But on them rivers and stuff, them fish are used to going out in that heavy current and chasing their bait down. That's why they sit behind them wing dikes. They just run out there, grab a snack, and come back, or behind a big rock. Cindy and I fished a tournament on the Illinois River one year, and there was a boulder. I mean, a boulder. It was probably 10 foot around and 10 foot tall. And we sat there and fished around that boulder all the time because on a side scan, there was fish behind it. And we didn't win that tournament, but the people that was fishing up above us on the river did win it, and they was fishing a similar situation. But you get in there and you find something like that, you fish it. But the current was tough that day. If we'd have fished directly behind that boulder and stood off to the side of it, I think we did. Now, as I look at it now, I think we'd have done a lot better.
Right. And, Lyle, I know you've heard me say it and a few of the other ones, but we've got a lot of new people in here, guys. And I know we talk junk about bass fishermen. But let me tell you, using a bullet weight, a hook, and a rubber worm will teach you so much about the bottom of the waters that you fish. If you got a good graphite rod, use braided line, and you can feel every little thing that you come across. You'll start learning to feel a shell bottom, a rocky bottom, a muddy bottom, whether you on wood or whether you on a rocky. You will learn so much, and don't be surprised if you get hammered.
That's right.
Grab it.
I tell you, James, I believe that fishing for bass and, like you say, where you're bouncing along the bottom was the basics for me being able to tell what the bottom is like when I'm back bottom bouncing.
Yep.
Because I can tell if I'm in sand, if I'm in mud, if I'm up against a tree, if I'm bouncing over some rocks, I know what it is because I felt it before, and I attribute that to all them years of trying to catch them bass, doing the same thing except in reverse.
Yeah, like Frank just said, flatheads are ambush predators, channel cats are pack hunters. He said he don't have enough experience with the blues. I don't think they got blues up in his area, but
it don't matter about blues. They'll do it all.
But I'm gonna tell you, some of the bigger blues that been caught on Wiley has actually come on live bait.
Sure,
live perch. So guys, don't think that them blues will eat just cut bait. They will eat live bait too. Jig and pig and jig. That's what we use.
Oh yeah, that was a big deal back in the. Oh, I remember in the 70s really well. Maybe before that, but pork rind, Uncle Josh's pork rinds, pork skins, pork baits. They had They had tons of different colors and different variations. I had them all.
Yeah, and it's fun, but. I can imagine. In fact, last year I posted up a buddy of mine. He's a big-time bass fisherman. He was sending me pictures one day. He's on Wiley, and he was killing the daggum 15 to 28-pound blues, skipping baits underneath docks.
Heck yeah.
He was wearing the freaking blue. He was so upset because he was in a tournament wanting to catch bass. And them big blues was hammering. He was throwing... Lyle, he was skipping a big 10-inch worm underneath them docks and wearing them out.
I got a message in on a private message in Facebook that a guy bought some striper jig heads and he's going to tip Chad with them on the bottom for baits. It'll work. I promise you it'll work.
Yes.
I got another message in there from a gentleman that. With a new setup that he's got, it's kind of like what we're talking about with all kinds of stuff on. He's got a flathead in the picture of it. So people are watching and they're paying attention to what we're talking. This is in chat and Facebook. It don't have anything to do with where we're at. But I see messages from K&B and guys like that talking about using that stuff back in that. I didn't think them guys was old enough. Hell, I didn't think Kevin was old enough to remember the 1970s.
said, you got to try fishing for the Twerking Monkey Award using bass lures.
That's right.
It was Kevin. It's but don't. And that's what I tried to tell my buddy that's a bass fisherman. He said, yeah. He said, we got all this kind of different kind of baits and all these brand new. And I'm talking about some of them bass lures are expensive as crap now.
Oh, yeah.
And I told him, I said, look, man, the bass hadn't changed.
No, they haven't
changed.
People
and they might change to their conditions, but a fish, he got just a couple things on his mind. That's reproduction, that's food, and that's shelter.
That's right.
And that's it in a nutshell. Yeah, Jody said she's in here. She's listening.
I'll tell you, somebody that can relate to everything we're talking about is old Jeremy DeFore, Creole Catfishing, because he lives down south. He fishes them big rivers all the time. Yep. And all the stuff that we're talking about, I'm sure that he's sitting there going, yep, because that's what he sees every day. And he's down there. The last dam is in St. Louis. So by the time it gets to him, that pebble of sand that he sees has rolled over 1 billion times.
Yeah.
As it floated down through there and it ends up there, down there where he's at. So it's just, it's just knowledge, and he can relate to sandbars and all this stuff. Another guy that knows a lot about that stuff is Tim Scott, Epic Catfishing. He sees all that stuff for years and years and years. And that's how you learn that, is to fish it. But it's no different in a lake, because the only difference between lake fishing and river fishing is that you don't get the changes all the time like you do in the rivers. The changes come slower and subtle, and before you know it, that they're already made. So it's the way it is.
Yeah. Me and Dieter got talking about something. We was on the phone, and as usual, like me and Wampus Cat, we get into some stuff that's pretty deep. And I asked him, I said, look, I've heard you and Jeff and a few others talk about Lake Wiley topping out as far as size. I said, I disagree, but now that I talked to him, it ain't so much that I disagree. Lake Wiley is probably one of the most unique lakes in America. And the reason I'm saying that, guys and gals, is that the states did not stock this lake. The fishermen stocked this lake.
Mm-hmm.
And the DNA for blues and flatheads in Lake Wiley is from probably about 10 different states, Lyle. Big fish water. We have the DNA. We have the forage. We have the food. Why are we not producing 100-pound fish? And Dieter said he has come to think that it has to do with the water. If you think about it, the further north on the Catawba River chain, it's like the fish get smaller. The further down you go, you start noticing the average size fish getting bigger. Now, don't get me wrong. When it comes to average weight of a day catfishing, Wiley ranks pretty freaking high for your average weight caught.
I agree.
It's not breaking that. Jeff Manning's got the record 82 pounds, and that was caught quite a few years ago. That fish is probably dead and gone by now. Why hasn't another one been caught? It ain't for the lack of DNA. It's not for the lack of food. What is it?
Well, with all them fish brought in from different places around you, it's not a lack of genetics. And I attribute that to a lot of the stuff. But he may be onto something, because maybe the food doesn't have the nutrients in it to make them big. It's hard to say. That would be a question for a biologist. But I got to tell you, I know a lot of them guys, and some of them are very knowledgeable. Some of them not so much. So you got to get the right biologist to be able to give you a correct answer. And then they're going to say, well, we got to do studies, and then we'll tell you why. I don't know what your growing season out there is. I know in Missouri, our growing seasons is a lot slower than it is in the southern part of the United States. They grow year round down there because they eat year round. And they
And that's the
don't
way it is
as
here.
much. The further north you get, they don't. But tell me why they got them big yellow perch, they got giant crappie, they got big flatheads, but them flatheads are dormant in the winter, but they still get pretty good size.
Yeah.
And a lot of other places they don't. I don't know.
And that's like he brought up a thing. He said, James, think about Lyle and the Mississippi River. The further north on the Mississippi you go, the smaller the fish get.
That's right.
Further south you go, where you got
Bigger they
more
Yep.
nutrient-rich waters, the bigger the fish get, the further
Yep.
south. So that means, Creole, we waiting on that 100-pounder to come in your boat, Creole. You down at the very end of it, son. You ought to be getting them all.
Well, there's no question in my mind that he's down in there where they're at. There's no doubt in my mind. I got to get down there and fish with that guy, man. That'd be too much fun.
It's like he said, though. There's not that many people actually chasing catfish with rod and reels just to be trophy fishing. They fishing for food.
We go to Mendota and fish for those giant channel cats, and the reason those are in there is because people up there think that they're trash fish. They don't eat them. They don't want them. They don't fish for them. They don't eat them. To me, that's one of the greatest predator fishes of all time is a big channel cat because he's survived everything and still been able to grow to 25, 30 pounds. They are a ton of fun to catch. Pound per pound, I have to say they're the hardest fighting fish of all in fresh water. They get very little respect because people eat them and fish for them, but up there they consider them trash fish and they don't eat them, and that just makes the fishes that much better for me.
Yeah. It was, Frank, I agree 100% about the pay lakes. It was, what happened on Wiley is that we're split with North Carolina and South Carolina, and they still a 280-year-old feud going on between the two states, the North and the South, I guess. And they just wouldn't spend no money as far as the catfish. They already had channel cats in it, so they didn't really care. So the lakes above us had flatheads and blues, and the lakes below us had flatheads and blues. It's just, eventually we started seeing a few here and there, and next thing you know, Wiley's turned into a flathead heaven, Lyle. It really is. The flatheads are turning on big time.
I just got another message from a guy in chat that's got a deal made up that's got 2 spinner blades on it, a couple of rattles, and 2 hooks, one about 1.5 feet ahead of the other.
Hey, go get them, boys. Make sure you post us some pictures, send us some pictures. And I told you earlier, Lyle, I got a buddy out in Oklahoma and one out in Kansas. They fish in real rocky rivers. They fish behind dams and they're on float tubes. And I'm sure that by now they're probably using kayaks too now.
No problem, so.
And they throwing big 1-ounce jig heads with big saltwater rubber lures and wearing the flatheads out.
There you go.
Just wearing them out. So
they're like we said earlier, there's something going to come along one of these days, and everybody's going to say, "Why didn't I think of that?" Well, because you didn't want to try nothing new.
Guess what? These guys don't have no electronics on them float tubes.
No, none.
They're
in fact, where are they going to put them?
That river.
Yep. Learn new water, and it'll make you a better fisherman. I promise you.
Yeah. Well, I thank you for coming in.
James, it's always a pleasure.
Yeah, and I knew, guys and gals, this show is going to continue doing what we do here. We're going to bring you education. We're going to bring you information that you can put to work, helping you catch fish. Share it with new people coming into the thing. Don't steer them wrong. Don't send them on a wild goose chase. You wouldn't want somebody to do you that way. Me and Lyle had the opportunity to learning from some old timers that learned the hard way. Old flat bottom wooden boats and stuff, paddled out where they went. They done it to feed the family.
That's right.
If you don't go out and catch fish to feed mom and the kids, guess what? You go hungry. So they damn sure had to learn where those fish was at, when they was there, and why they was there.
That's right.
So there's a lot of information that can come from that. But this is just part one, guys, of this. We're going to keep working on some of these things. There are a lot of new people coming in. Make sure you share it up. Make sure you share the love and the bait with them also. Don't steer them wrong. Invite them to go fishing with you. Put them on the boat. Make their day. You never know. They might make your day.
That's right.
With that being said, God bless each and every one of y'all. I hope you enjoyed tonight. Share it up. And we'll be seeing y'all next Wednesday night. Lyle will be seeing you Monday night. There's a lot of shows coming on tomorrow night, Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, Tuesday night. They own every night of the week, guys. So go check them out. Share the bait. Share the love. We'll see y'all on the water. Good night.